And I think that's important because number one, like how can you be somebody that you're not? And then number two, if you're gonna lead people around you, how can these people trust you and respect you in the way that they need to for a leader if you can't be authentic?
Yeah, there's authenticity is just going to have to put a little disclaimer, a little asterisk next to it. Because yes, you have to be authentic, meaning that people have to know what to expect when you walk into a room. So they know what you care about, they know your values, they know your general sentiment and personality. You're consistent. Like consistency can actually help you get away with almost anything, which is why like what is a good leader is kind of like a weird question because it's more so like what leader do you want to be and what leader does your company need, what leader etc. does your environment need. But people sometimes see authentic and they're just like, oh, that means I'm going to share everything. And there's another aspect of being a leader, which means that you're growth oriented, you're optimistic, even despite being a realist.
Yeah. So before we get too far in the conversation, because I don't know really where we're going to go today, but I am excited to talk to you. I know we talked. I think the first time we talked was a while back, and I've been looking forward to this because I think the stuff that we're going to get into about leadership and those kind of things, I really like. I think they're important regardless of what it is that you do, but we do talk a lot about business and entrepreneurship on here. But I think that, and I'd love to get your philosophy on this, but I think that even outside of those spaces, leadership can really just be, bringing our best self to whatever, because there's a lot of people, I think, whether you have a business or not, if you have a family, if you have people around you, I think some of the philosophies of leadership that as I understand it, can be useful in those areas. So it's not just like, it's not just that business owners or entrepreneurs or people in that space sort of benefit from that. I think everybody can really benefit from that.
Yeah, depending on how you define leadership. I mean, we also can talk about self-leadership, but really it just means that you inspire followers. And so how are you showing up? I mean, I actually prefer to inspire yourself first, but that's in every industry, in every moment, in every situation. One of the workshops that got pretty popular that I launched in the past was how to lead when you're not a leader, or how to lead without authority. And really it's just about like, how are you showing up in a way that people, like it gets people's attention. Like you have a certain presence, you have a mission, you have a certain level of credibility, you're reliable to the people around you. And then we can talk about leading others. But first you got to be that person for yourself.
Yeah, I think what you're kind of hitting on right there is something that the way I understand it and the sort of the personal philosophy I have is authenticity in leadership. And I think that's important because number one, like how can you be somebody that you're not? And then number two, if you're gonna lead people around you, how can these people trust you and respect you in the way that they need to for a leader if you can't be authentic?
Yeah, there's authenticity is just going to have to put a little disclaimer, a little asterisk next to it. Because yes, you have to be authentic, meaning that people have to know what to expect when you walk into a room. So they know what you care about, they know your values, they know your general sentiment and personality. You're consistent. Consistency can actually help you get away with almost anything, which is why like what is a good leader is kind of like a weird question because it's more so like what leader do you want to be and what leader does your company need, what leader, etc. does your environment need. But people sometimes see authentic and they're just like, oh, that means I'm going to share everything. And there's another aspect of being a leader, which means that you're growth oriented, you're optimistic, even despite being a realist. Like, yes, you're honest, but you're also like leading people forwards. And sometimes people are like, oh, well, I have to be authentic, so I got to tell people what I really think here. And then all of a sudden now you have like a venting session, and that's not leadership. And so like it's authenticity, but like towards a goal and with intention.
Okay. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So when you is there like, so you work with these people in leadership, and I don't want to assume what is it that, again, leadership, and what was it? Because I know you mentioned it.
Yeah, so really simple career coaching for leaders at every stage of their journey.
Okay.
We basically help people become fearless in their careers. I generally tend to work with people that are values driven. They care about kind of creating an impact in the world, and they understand that they have to lead themselves before they lead others. So it's a little bit more holistic. Yes, I do the like executive coaching. Like I have the enterprise clients like the CDC and things like that, where I go in and working on executive presence and direct and concise communication. how to give feedback, how to coach, etc. But generally the leaders I work with it's like broader than just the technical skills. And we integrate those in because generally when someone wants to take more advantage of their career or become fearless in their career and deal with some of those limiting beliefs, like it involves a lot of those technical skills too.
Okay. So all right, when you say holistic, what do you mean? Like, can you go a little bit deeper into that holistic?
Yeah. So I start with self-leadership when I work with my clients. So generally the people that are attracted to me are being held back for some reason in their career. They have some sort of limiting belief. They don't know what they want, so they lack clarity. They don't have a lot of confidence in themselves. They're suffering from like imposter syndrome. So they need to build confidence. And they haven't really figured out how to like operate within their environment or to change it. So they need to take back control kind of like of how they show up and their intentions. Self-leadership is clarity, confidence, and control. And oftentimes when someone is holding themselves back in something, they're afraid. They're afraid of maybe creating a vision or figuring out what their vision is. They're afraid of their environment of being judged, of kind of taking a risk or taking a leap. They're afraid of kind of living towards what they truly want to create within their job, within their career overall. And then it's like, okay, great. So now you're this leader. You're in this role. Like this happens a lot when people move into leadership positions and haven't done it before, or a leader that moves into like an executive level role. They doubt themselves. They don't know what they're working towards. They don't know their brand. They don't know how to show up in a way that's consistent to who they want to be and the impact they want to create. And so then we get technical. Great. Let's talk about performance management. Let's talk about feedback. Let's talk about coaching. Let's talk about delegation. Let's talk about how to be strategic and have a vision and how to actually implement that. Let's talk about cross-functional collaboration. Let's talk about managing conflict, like all the actual technical stuff that a leader needs. But you can't, that doesn't matter as much unless you have clarity, you know where you're going, you believe in yourself, you have confidence, and you know how to show up in a way that's intentional and aligned with your values, and you can take control of your every single day actions and such.
Yeah. Well, man, I don't love to hear that people have imposter syndrome, but I love to hear that you're saying that people at this level have imposter syndrome, because I think that so. We talk a good bit about this. We touch on this a lot, and I think people feel that when they feel this way, they're doing something wrong or it's not meant for them or whatever. But I think the main message here is this is a very common thing when you're trying to go to that next level. And I think it's also too that, that's showing you that you have enough self-awareness and humility to say, well, I'm not this person yet, but I can become that person. Before we get too far down that, I want to go back to something you said earlier, which was basically the people that work with you, even though they're sort of in this space, there's the imposter syndrome and all that. I think you said one key trait that was there was the desire to sort of improve as leaders. So in other words, like you can't, and I think that's the difference between a leader and like an employer or a boss, is like that person wants the improvement. And I mean, it's just like anything else, like you can't force a person to improve, them. So they have to be sort of in that space to accept that. But I think you mentioned that was something that sort of like these people have the desire, I guess, to, improve whatever area.
Yeah, it's actually sometimes I laugh at this topic, and I don't know if your listeners struggle with this because they're listening to a podcast, but a lot of people want to improve and they forget that everything they want to improve is just a problem they need to solve. And so they forget that they need to approach it like they solve any problem. So what do you do when there's a leak in your house, right? You call an expert. Or maybe if you're kind of self-driven, you go online and watch a YouTube video on how to fix it. You go to the store, you go to like a hardware store and go get supplies. Like you actually take action. But you have people in leadership or in business and entrepreneurship, they have this problem and they're like, something as simple as, I don't know what I want to do. Okay, great. So you're sitting in ambiguity and confusion. It's a problem. How do you solve it? Listen to a podcast, search. How do I figure out what I want to do? Ask ChatGPT, like just get started. And a lot of leaders, surprisingly, this is just a really interesting fact. Like a lot of them don't understand that they can figure out how to become a better leader. They can figure out how to enjoy their career more. But for some reason, when it comes to work, especially if people are working the 9-to-5 for a company, they think, oh, my job's supposed to give it to me. And if my job doesn't give it to me, I don't need to do it. But if it's something that you want to improve on, maybe you do. Maybe you have to take some personal ownership. Maybe you have to listen to a podcast at 6 p.m. after work. Maybe you have to do it on the weekend. Maybe you have to hire a coach. But generally, it's you are responsible, you are accountable, and you are empowered to take control of your career to become the person that you want to be, the professional. Your job isn't, your organization isn't.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put that. So I want to ask something. I know it's really hard to sort of generalize, and I don't mean to generalize, but and it's hard to sort of differentiate the different, or maybe the different places that people need to work. But if you had, so the leaders who are sort of in their company, maybe they're hired into a company or they're promoted or whatever, those people versus the leaders who sort of build their own product or company, so the entrepreneurs and stuff. Do you notice like key differences between the two as far as the things they're having issues with, the areas they're having issues with? Are there sort of, I know there's probably there's a spectrum of things, but if you had to sort of narrow it down to a key difference, like say the people who were hired in, they have sort of these issues, and then the entrepreneurs are the people who build it from the ground up, they have these sort of issues.
Okay, that is a big question, because I think they struggle with different things, but also struggle with the same things. But it also depends on where they're at in their career, especially as an entrepreneur. But I will say, I created the 3 C's of self-leadership because generally when I find someone stuck, I don't care if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a leader, if you're an entry-level employee, whatever, you generally lack, and I'm going to go back to the 3 C's again, so bear with me. I'll just get a little bit more descriptive. You lack clarity. So you don't know where you want to go, and you don't know why you want to get there. So values and goals, and to sum it up, we can talk about how to figure those out. But generally, you don't know why you care about the thing, and you don't know how you're actually going to go accomplish the thing. If you can figure that out, then you can solve ambiguity and you can create motivation, and all of a sudden now you know at least the actions you might need to take. Now, you might know the actions you need to take, but don't believe in yourself enough to actually take them. So then we have confidence. So generally you either lack a skill and you don't know how to learn it, even though it's a problem you can solve. We are living in an age where learning is free and everywhere. It's incredible. Or you don't believe in yourself. And generally, the main thing is you don't believe in yourself most of the time. We have limiting beliefs. We don't think we can do something. We're afraid of what people are going to think of us, etc. Whatever it is, we have some level of fear. Hence the book Becoming Fearless. If you have the goals, you know why you're doing it. You believe that you can do it. Now it's like, well, how do I change my environment? How do I show up differently in my life? How do I take back control of my time? And so that is the kind of structure, prioritization. It can be really difficult for people sometimes, especially when you're trying to change something that you're already doing. And so that's where clarity, confidence, and control come in. And it's an entrepreneur or it's a leader in an organization. Take their problem, put it through that framework, and I bet you anything we can come to some sort of action and some sort of solution.
Okay. Yeah, that's I appreciate you laying it out like that. So I would just imagine, man. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to add to this to make it a little bit more specific. So an entrepreneur, maybe they don't know why they care about the thing they're trying to create. So a lot of people come to me like, Ben, I want to make a lot of money. What do I do? I'm going to go buy a laundromat because I heard it from Cody Sanchez or Alex Ramosi or something. And I'm like, great. Why? And they're like, make a lot of money. And I was like, okay, but why? What do you do with the money? And like, it's okay to want to make a lot of money, but if you can't figure out how that aligns with your core values in terms of as a human being, your motivations, you're going to give up after 3 weeks. You're just not going to invest the amount of time to create the solution. So let's say you know why you want to do something, and then you're talking to the entrepreneur and you're like, great, what are you going to do? It's like, I don't know where to start. Okay, well, you have to like, what's your goal? What's your goal for year 1? And okay, maybe I want to buy the laundromat. Great, break that down. So break that down into 12 different goals, like monthly goals. Break that down into daily goals. Okay, so maybe you need to start going research locations. Awesome, that's day 1. So entrepreneurs sometimes don't know where to start. But then also they have limiting beliefs like, as who am I to do this? I've been working 9 to 5 this whole time. No one's been an entrepreneur in my family. I don't have any experience in this. I can't do this. What if I fail? So that's confidence. And then the control, it's like, well, I kind of just like, I have this job, takes up most of my time. I really like watching TV and Netflix. I kind of care a little bit more about traveling the world than I do about starting this business. So that's control. That's the entrepreneur. And we can do the same thing for the leader, but I think, maybe the audience kind of gets where I'm going with this framework and some of the problems people face.
This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So, what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. No, yeah, I think, yeah, you laid it out pretty well. And this is coming sort of from the mindset space, like the things that I see sort of in the mindset coaching space with entrepreneurs is like a lot of times because they create the thing, the product or the service or the company or whatever it is, a lot of times we sort of attribute or we attach our self-worth to that thing, to the success or failure of that thing. Because if you're, if you start something and you're working 12 hours a day on this thing for a period of time to get it off the ground or whatever, I mean, you have a lot of time invested into that. And so I think it's the success or failure. It's easy for us to put like I'm saying our as entrepreneurs, our worth into that thing, whether or not it fails or succeeds. And that's kind of where I was going with that question. It's like, if a person's hired into a company to lead at an executive level or mid manager level or whatever it is, that's a little bit different because it's like, I want to say their skills is what makes it, their role succeed or fail. I mean, they can't really at large, they're sort of in a huge machine for the company, but they like what they do specifically doesn't really, the company's success or failure is not really tied to that, at least not directly, not to one person. I mean, I know if they lead a lot of people, that's a huge chunk of the work that's going on there. But like with the entrepreneur, man, a small business owner, they're sort of tied to everything. I think Tony Robbins says the failure or success of an organization is 80% psychology of the leadership and 20% mechanics. So and you mentioned confidence, it's like, and I think that's very real, because if you're in that space and you're like so fixated on whether or not this thing, succeeds or fails, and your self-worth is tied to that, you're like, it's going to have a massive impact on your ability to, whether you think you could do it or not. But, and that's just kind of where I was going with that. Like, I didn't know if the leaders in the companies, if they had sort of, if their problems were different. I've never been in that sort of space, the mid-level manager or the company, with, you lead 100 people or whatever it is. But I know in entrepreneurship space, and then it's also that, so it's that, but then it's also too, like, just by nature, man, entrepreneurs are sort of go against the grain, So I feel like a lot of times it's hard for us to maybe take that outside advice, when we really need it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so with an entrepreneur, this might be simplifying it. I make money, I'm successful. Like, maybe not everyone thinks that. They have different goals. But I'd actually say, because I've worked 9 to 5, I will go in for the right opportunity. It adds a lot of clarity in terms of what people are feeling. There is so much opportunity for stress within that 9 to 5. How do I give this feedback to my direct report? I guess as a founder, you can have this too, but let's talk about, let's say maybe you're like a solo entrepreneur or kind of in like an individual business. But as a leader, how do I give this feedback? What if they don't like me? What did my peer mean when they said that? My boss isn't giving me feedback. Am I doing a good job? What if I get laid off? What if I lose this position? I have no financial security, because these people generally don't know how to make, right? They don't have extra income streams all the time. Right. Oh man, work is toxic. Oh man, I have to work 80 hours a week for this thing. Like, people in a normal job, per se normal, quote unquote, have so many stressors, and they're different, and some the same. But it all comes down to that mindset that you mentioned. Like, you will succeed as a founder, you will succeed as an employee if you believe in yourself, if you believe that you will succeed, if you take a look at your fear and explore it and kind of create, just prepare. Like, even for like 9 to 5ers, I'm like, great. So no matter what, you have the opportunity to lose your job at any given point in time. Do you have financial security, and do you potentially have other ways of making money? Do you have additional income streams? And if you have that, the way that you can show up in terms of your level of confidence and being an authentic leader within a 9 to 5, within a corporate environment, it's night and day. It's unbelievable. But the message generally when it comes to working at at a corporation or a company, etc., is look, I will get a job. I'm at a job. They're supposed to pay me. I have some safety and security here. But I think now, at least in this year, we're learning that that's not exactly true. And I think we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence of, because they say entrepreneurs, from the ashes rise to the phoenix, that entrepreneurs are born in disruption and in loss and in grief and in hardship. We're seeing a lot of people start their own businesses, especially kind of within the consulting space. They're looking franchises, buying from kind of the boomer generation that's retiring and such. Like we're seeing that people are, I hope, in some instances, are putting more faith in themselves and then in their companies.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think it's crazy because I think the workforce in general is changing. Like it's like a new generation is coming in, and I've heard from people in this space, like not to pick on I don't know what the generation is called. I think millennials cut off at like 97 or something, 98, 1998. What I don't know when the year, like what the span is, but whatever is after millennials, that sort of the early 2000s, I guess. Um, a lot of those people in the workforce today, they don't want to have like face to face jobs where they interact with people face to face, and so a lot of jobs are like that. And so I think it's going to be interesting in the next 10, 15 years to see how the job market changes, because there's so much change going on. Like COVID came in and did what it did, and now there's a lot of things that are virtual. There's a lot of virtual business, there's a lot of online business, and I think online businesses are attractive to people because obviously they can work from anywhere, they can be remote, whatever. But it's interesting, like it's interesting to see the shifts. There's a lot of changes, but I think one thing that leaders should probably be aware of is that shift, because you have like the newer generation that's coming in. What I've found in being in that space is that they are sort of motivated by different things than maybe the prior generation was. Like I think a big thing now for people, I think people are really starting to focus on personal time a lot more. Like I think I read a statistic the other day, and I don't remember the exact statistic, but it said that more people would prefer more time off versus more pay. Like if they had the option between a job that paid more versus a job that respected their time, they would definitely choose the job that gave them more time with their family or whatever.
Yeah, I know I did see a statistic that people will be willing to accept a 20-30% pay cut for remote work. We are seeing a big push for return to office from a lot of major companies.
Mm-hmm.
But just on your comment around like generational differences in terms of leadership needs, yes, they're extreme. And one of the reasons why, at least kind of the whispers are why companies are bringing people back to the office, is because they're not exactly sure how to lead the various generations, especially remotely. Uh, it is tough though, because I know this is maybe just the older Ben talking here, that an entry level employee, someone just starting their career, there's a huge benefit from getting them in the room with other people that they haven't met before, getting them out of their house, getting them, also training, absorption of knowledge tends to be a little bit better. They could shadow a little bit easier. I think there are a lot of skills that are created from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years, because I'm kind of seeing things go back to the way they were in some companies, and in other companies they're not. Yeah, and they got the integration of AI, and leaders now are going to they're probably going to have new tools to assess the productivity of their team. Mm-hmm. But a lot of companies are, we're talking on a podcast right now, there's mm-hmm. a lot of majority of companies out there that aren't using virtual tools, that are still printing things on paper, and still faxing and things like that. So it's such a wide range of what is possible and what work actually is.
Mm-hmm. Dude, you're exactly right. I go into some businesses sometimes, man, and it's like they're still in the paper copier, everything with like I went to a gym one time. Well, I mean, there's that too, yeah. But I went to a gym one time, and they're sort of, so they had a scan-in thing where you scan in at the door, but then beside it there was like a notebook, and you wrote your name down, the date and the time. I was like, dude, somebody's got to go through this. You got to keep up with this. Like, anyway, I don't know how much the system cost, and there was a barcode there, so I'm not really sure what the purpose of the book was. I don't know if the barcode, like, I would think that if I was going to have a system for some sort of entry system, like it would document that as you scan your barcode to get into I don't know what was going on, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there's such a spectrum. But you were talking about the benefits of sort of working in person. I think a lot of companies, they sort of reported like more productivity and stuff when people were working from home, and they sort of made their own schedule. And where those numbers come from, I don't know. How they're measuring productivity, I don't know. But I think the message there is, I think all that means is that if you respect the people's time and whatever they need from you as a job or employer, I think you'll see productivity go up. I don't think it's necessarily working from home. I think the only reason they saw that was because people were able to sort of work at their own schedule, or create their own schedule. But I mean, again, I think that if you just respect the people's time and energy, and you can have those same that same benefit. Because for a long time there, like, I'm sure our parents' generation and the generation before that, it was like the workspace or the workplace was like a completely different place, man. It was like, the 12-hour, grind all day, every day, just shut up and do your job type thing. But it's like a lot of things have changed since then. And now you have employers, hopefully, who are hiring based on merit and skill, and not based on, who knows who or whatever's going on. Because I think capitalism has its problems, man. But I think one of the big things about capitalism is that you can, in theory, if it works well, the people who do the best work, get the most business, in theory.
In theory, yeah. In theory, it's it is. We're still in a very much, your network is your net worth, that lovely
Right.
quote. And
Yep.
I think I wrote once, and I think I wrote it in Becoming Fearless, I'm not sure, but relationships are the only true currency, or the only universal currency. And man, if I had no money, like your relationships could house you, could feed you, could end up getting you a job.
Yeah.
So, and then if you have global relationships, then you're kind of have a certain level of freedom, and people can take your money, but they can't take the people that want to help you and support you. But one of the things that leaders tend to question the most in the remote world, or even just this day and age, is work. They're like, nobody wants to work. How do I track people working? Well, okay, so that's just performance management. So what are your processes and systems to assess people's work and make sure that they're doing the amount of work that you want them to do to meet certain goals? So generally that means that leaders aren't setting goals, and leaders aren't actually keeping in touch and assessing for progress. There's a problem solution. We can figure this out as a company, as leaders overall. And then how do we motivate them to make sure that they do the work, or they work more, they're more productive? Everyone's different in terms of what they're motivated by. Some of the younger generation that I've worked with, they want to go into the office. Some of the generation that I've worked with, they want to work from home. Some of them want different hours. Like it's so, I think we're so like this idea that we can just add these like general blanket statements for the workplace. As you said, what has probably changed the most? People have options, and because people have options, they have different motivations. And so now we need to explore what those options are and what those motivations are, and give more personalized leadership. Before, you had no choice. Everyone went into the office at 8, left at whatever time they left for some contrived random reason that they made up in this corporate world. And now you don't have to. So because of that, leadership becomes a little bit more personalized.
Yeah, man, that's a really good word to describe leadership, as personalized. Because I think a lot of people, you hear what's the quote, that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And I think the reason for that is because a lot of times you don't. And this is a very heavy quote, but I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is. So Jordan Peterson says that about 60% of managers offer zero or negative net value to a company, which means that most people who are in that spot probably shouldn't be in that spot. And we can talk about, how do these people get promoted? I think promoting a person because they do their job well is very different from promoting a person because they are a leader and they're able to lead people. Because I see that a lot too, man. Like, people get promoted and just because they do their job well, but when they get promoted into the leadership position, the job they did well is no longer their job. So leading people and doing the technical stuff are sort of two different things. So I think, but also too, just to be fair, I mean, most people are simply not leaders. And I don't know, you might have a philosophy on this, but I don't know if like, I don't want to say they're born. I don't want to say natural leaders or whatever. I mean, I think these things can be taught. And I think that's kind of what you do with people. But I think that, I do think that the technical side of the job is different from leading people. But just to go back to what Jordan Peterson was saying, like, I don't know. I think it is personalized because I think a lot of us a lot of people in that space don't have those relationships with their team. And I think that's really what, like, you know, it's like, I don't know if you have children or not. I don't have children, but I've heard a lot of people say that like they have different relationships with different, you know, if they had 2 kids, 3 kids, whatever it is, it's like their relationship is different with each one. So it's like, why do you, if that's the case, and like everybody's different, and like if you have, you know, if you have 5 friends or whatever it is, you probably have a different relationship with all those. So why do we try to have the same leadership style with all of our team if there's multiple team members? You know what I mean? Like why is it not personalized to this person? And I'm not saying, you know, pick favorites or anything like that. I'm saying like everybody has a unique personality, and this is why I've always said that I think like self-awareness is my exact thing that I say about self-awareness is that it can alleviate or possibly eliminate a lot of problems that we have in our personal life, professional life. Like if we're just aware of how we come across and the person that we're interacting with, I think our relationships, personal or professional, can be a lot better than what they are. But yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think the lack of the, you know, personalization of those unique relationships, and I think that's the thing for people. I think a lot of people don't feel seen or understood. You know, a lot of like entry level people, or you know, your team members.
Yeah. And by the way, I think we're talking about in a company that there's options, because I've worked with a lot of CEOs that are getting kind of into a turnaround and they have to, you know, laying off 50% of their team. Well, personalized leadership isn't the focus anymore. It's you do what I say because we need to save this business. And so we're talking about, if you're an employee at a company and you're like, yeah, my leader should personalize their approach to me. If you're a leader and you're like, yeah, I guess I should personalize. Generally, it's because you have options. Like you can leave. There's that choice. Sometimes though, a leader is a leader. Just like, you know, you said, kids, a parent is a parent, and what they say goes. And I think there's a couple things missing in the work environment right now, from my experience working with clients. One, people aren't giving their leader that level of power. Like, okay, yes, this is a job. I'm getting paid. I need to do the thing that my leader is telling me to do. And they're maybe not giving them enough grace to be like, my leader said that to me in a mean way, so I'm not going to work today. Well, no, like, this is your job. You should have pride in your work. If you don't have pride in your work, you won't be motivated. You'll be disengaged. You yourself will hate your days. So there's some aspect of that. And then the other side is like, okay, great. My leader isn't responsible for making this job perfect. They help. I am. So then what do I need from my manager? How do I manage up? How do I lead myself, or help my manager lead me to create an environment that suits me, that fits me? And so yes, leaders should approach with curiosity, with this concept of personalizing leadership, but they can't do it unless the employee wants to also do it too. And so both the leader has to change their approach and the employee has to change their approach to provide this personalized level of leadership in an environment where the talent has a little bit more power. Because we'll still say, like, in certain companies right now, like, you're just unless you have built that security safety net, like that you have that financial stability and you have other income streams and such, a lot of people are just trying to survive because companies are just trying to also survive.
Yeah. Well, excuse me, I do see that a lot too. It's like a lot of back and forth, you know, because I've actually seen companies, man, where this usually it's usually larger companies, but it's like the employer or the leadership team does something, and then the team members feel a certain way, and then they do something, and the leadership does a certain way. But like, what you don't understand is it's like a cycle, and the reason it is a cycle is because, like you said, everybody's trying to survive. And I think that people think that just because, you know, even if it's a large company, just because you're a company, you know, you have all this money or whatever, but it's like, you know, a lot of places are living like, I don't know about paycheck to paycheck, but like it's on a month to month thing. Like that's a treadmill that you have to keep going with these, you know, with your selling your cash flow or whatever it is, you know, your product or service. But I wanted to ask you about what I've completely lost my train of thought. You were talking about the last bit right there. What did you say on that last bit? Because I kind of lost my train of thought when I was talking about something else.
You were talking a little bit how it's this kind of relates to generally when talent has a little bit more power. Because right now, like, people may be like, well, there's a certain type of there's a good type of leadership. It kind of depends on what you need to achieve as a company. It kind of depends on what the culture is as a company. And I'm working with leaders right now that are They need to be a little bit more authoritarian. They need to say, like, this is what I need you to do, and you need to do it. If not, you need to leave, because an employee is still responsible for helping the company meet its goals, despite the fact that maybe they want a little softer touch from their leader, a little bit more career development.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what I was going to say was, and I'm sure this is different, like on a larger company, but so I've always been of the philosophy that as a leader, you should be able to lead from, I guess maybe the front lines, like from like the job, like from the I always say from the back, because if you lead from the back, you can see kind of what's going on instead of being at the front or the top. I don't like saying the top. I don't like the hierarchical structure of that. But if you can lead from the back, but in a large company, it's sort of not practical for a leader to, sort of be involved in the day-to-day things, because somebody has to be the leader. Somebody's got to be at the, like overseeing all this stuff. So when you talk about like building confidence and the clarity and the control and these kind of things, how does a leader, when they don't have that connection with their team because they don't really know, I mean, I feel like a lot of leaders don't even know what their team goes through on a day-to-day basis, because again, they haven't been there in that spot if they're in like one of these bigger companies or promoted or whatever. So how would you recommend a person sort of build that? I guess maybe we're talking about a relationship with their team, like build that sort of to be aware enough to know what their team deals with, and not just say, hey, I'm the leader. This came from my leader. This came from upper management, whatever this is how we're supposed to do. Like, what is there a certain way to, because like I said, it's not practical for a person to just put themselves in that day-to-day spot. And, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't happen overnight. And leaders are successful because they've built trust and relationships with their team.
Yep.
And they've also oriented them all towards a specific mission and vision. So everyone needs to know what they're working on and why they're working on it, period. So there's some level of strategic planning that has to happen with the team and the leader when they come on when they come on it initially. So that's, what are we trying to achieve? Why are we trying to achieve it? When are we trying to achieve it by? And what is my role in this goal? So everyone knows what's expected of them very specifically. It starts off from a team conversation, and it kind of breaks down into an individual conversation, where it's with the individuals and the team engaging in the conversation to figure out, well, what is their role and what are they supposed to do and what's expected of them. So they know what everyone's doing, they know what they're supposed to do, and the leader has agreement on that. Then they have to meet regularly. These are one-on-ones, weekly, generally meetings, where they're ensuring that they're going in the right direction. The leader is helping solve problems and provide coaching and development, and basically being there for them within those moments. So you have this relationship, you have an open door, you have communication, you have strategic planning. Now, if a leader is completely new to the team overall or hasn't done the work ever before, it is important that the leader take some time and do a little bit of shadowing. So if you're in person, this is where the leader walks the floor in manufacturing in a factory. This is when the leader helps pick inventory. This is when the leader goes and actually sits down with their employees and watches what they do. If you're virtual, you figure out a different way to do it. But there is some aspect of, I need to know a little bit of what you do and how you do it, not because I need to know how to do it, but because I need to understand what you go through. That can come through conversations, but generally that is helpful to do through shadowing, which is why even like in healthcare, the executives will walk the floors in their acute care hospitals and such. So it comes from, I know what you do enough, to we all know what we're trying to do, to I'm now assessing progress and providing support along the way towards doing it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put that. I want to go back to, you mentioned earlier about self-leadership. And I think this is sort of where this all starts, because we've been talking, for the most part, about leading other people, about being sort of in the company, and sort of being, leading, others in the company. But with yourself, like this self-leadership, I think I've also I don't really know what you mean when you say self-leadership, but like what I've always understood this to be, and my sort of belief on this is that, and I think you mentioned something along these lines earlier, you can't lead people if you can't lead yourself. If you can't really have that inner guidance with yourself or that trust with yourself, it's really going to be hard for other people to trust you in that space. So can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah. One of the things about leaders, by the way, and from the last question, is sitting with your employees and building a personalized profile for each person. This is who I am. This is what I care about. This is what I'm trying to achieve in my career. These are my strengths. These are the areas I'm trying to improve. And you keep that as a log. And then other notes like, oh, I just had a baby or just traveled to Venice last week or something. So you have these personal brand profiles. Leading yourself, it means you know that brand profile for yourself. So if your leader actually sat you down and was like, asked you all these questions, you could just shoot them off. Leading yourself is actually answering those 3 questions of, I know what I care about. I know what I'm working towards. I believe that I can accomplish it. I have the skills to do it, or I'm learning them. And I'm showing up in a way that I can say is intentional and that I'm proud. And the biggest roadblock for people is just that lack of belief and the fear that they're going to fail generally. Hence why I actually wrote the book, Becoming Fearless, because if you believed in yourself, if you knew that no matter what, you'd be okay, the world will open up for you. The doors, like, you will see everything as an opportunity. You'll go talk to that person you think's attractive. You'll go apply to that job. You'll go tell your manager what you need. You'll go tell you literally will. You'll have boundaries. You'll go to things that you want to go to and not have and then not go to things and not have FOMO. You'll go to the gym because you care about your health and your body. So when we know we're going to be okay, and we have confidence in ourselves, just that is true self-leadership. Now it's just trying to figure out what to do. Because I went through my life, no self-confidence. I lost it all when I lost soccer. Soccer was who I was as a human. I was going to play professionally, dedicated all my time and life to it. When I lost that, I lost everything. I also didn't have a lot of friends at the time. I was socially awkward because I was trying to get validation from the sport. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to be fearless. I'm going to say yes to everything that I've been saying no to over the years because of all the sacrifices I've made for this thing that I care about. And I went and explored life. I traveled. I said yes to everything. I challenged myself. And that was awesome for 5 years. I was so confident in myself. But then I got into another deep, deep hole because I had no direction. And so confidence, like self-leadership, is important. That's a huge component to be able to try things. But then we need to figure out, well, what are we at least aiming towards? And that can change. Our goals can change, but they should be sourced from something that we at least think we care about. And those things, that's true self-leadership for a person.
Yeah, man, that's a really good way to put that. You mentioned sort of this fear about this confidence about, whether or not you can do this or whether or not you can make this thing happen. And I think a lot of people, they do have that fear, but I think a lot of people see it as, this fear of failure, but they see it as also a fear of success. Like, if they do this thing and it works out, can they handle it? But that is still a fear of failure, because what that means is you feel like it is going to work. You just can't, you can't maintain or sustain, that success. So ultimately it's going to fail. It's still a fear of failure. And I think you're right, man. I think when you sort of have that level of confidence and you say that, either you can do it, or if you do it and it fails, you're going to be okay. Because I tell people all the time, I think that especially in the, for men in the dating space, in the professional space, I think that having those little, I want to say micro failures, the rejections, the no's and that kind of stuff, that's like a step to success. That's growth, because it becomes easier the next time you go up and introduce yourself and you're trying to sell a thing and the person says, well, no. And here's the thing. If you, and I learned this the hard way, if you knock on 100 doors, how many of those doors do you need to have to say, yes, I'll buy your thing? It's probably not all 100, it might not even be 50. It might not even be 20. Depends on what thing is you're selling. So if you just, and that's the thing. I think that there's going to be a 10-to-1 ratio anytime you try to, at least 10-to-1 ratio, and that's being generous. Anytime of failure to success, anytime you try something. And I think just sort of, putting yourself out there, man, and just being able to accept that and learn from it, I think is invaluable.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's even research that shows that at least up to the 30% of learning, you learn from mistakes. Mm-hmm. And then you just do it and make the mistakes. And then you're going to actually learn the skill. And then you can start focusing on the intricacies of the skill itself. But we need those mistakes to actually learn. That's how we cement the things that we actually have to do. The house of success is built from the bricks of failures. I don't know if you ever heard that. And that's I have. Yep. And that's where the confidence comes in. If I'm not afraid to fail, then I give myself the opportunity to learn, and I create the opportunity to succeed. see this with careers and the job search and stuff too. It's what's very few things in life, jobs and relationships, have like a 99% fail rate. Only 1% needs to work out. The one relationship that you're going to be in, hopefully, I mean, sure, there will be others, and the one job you're going to be in. So the one thing you're going to be in next, because there's going to be others. And even the thing that you're successful in is supposed to change, because you're supposed to learn. You're supposed to grow. You're supposed to move forward in your career. You're supposed to move forward in terms of who you want to be within relationships, because you grow as a human being. And so the failure is required. Are the 6-7 relationships that you had before you found the one person you want to be with, if that's what you think relationships are, were those failures because they didn't work out? Or were they successes because they led you to the person that you're with today? Same thing with jobs. If you get promoted, was that last job a failure? If you got laid off, was that last job a failure? No. It helped you learn skills and helped you create a path to the next job.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And this is, again, to go back to self-awareness, this is why self-awareness is so important, because if you're in that relationship that failed, or if you're in that job that you didn't perform at enough and you got fired, or it wasn't good for you, or whatever it was, if you don't have the self-awareness to be able to see what you did wrong, and I'm not saying, take 100% accountability for everything all the time, but I think, 50 is fair, maybe 60, maybe 70, depends on the situation. But if you're able to look in that situation and learn from it, have enough self-awareness to say, listen, this is why, this was my part in this, and now I can learn from this. Because I don't know, man, I think I've talked to some dating coaches and stuff on the podcast before, and I think they all sort of agree. There's differences, but I think they all agree that an intimate relationship is a mirror for yourself, and it will show you, the areas that you need to work on, what triggers you, what inspires you, and those kind of things. And so I think we would just be, it would be unwise of us to have those experiences and not learn, and I think the intimate dating space is definitely one of the good places for that, one of the best places for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sometimes when I'm working with clients in the leadership space, I'll just throw in like a relationship metaphor, because everyone's had those experiences, and
yeah,
they can be the same.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the case. And I told somebody this a couple weeks ago. I think the key difference is like the emotions, probably. I think most people don't have an emotional attachment to their work or their job. I know some people really like it, they're whatever, but I think what makes the intimate relationship different is the heavy emotions. But again, self-worth, self-confidence, all these things play a role in all of these spaces. And I don't know, man. I don't think you can be the best version of yourself, the best leader, the best employer, the best partner, until you can allow yourself to be improve, from these experiences, from these failures. So you mentioned before we started rolling about career, or I think you said career coaching. So we've been talking a lot about leadership, self-leadership. As far as the career, it is like, when you say career coaching, is it helping the leaders become better leaders, or is it helping the leaders maybe shift gears to sort of other places in their career, other directions?
Yeah, I just have a unique background where I've worked, like I've actually managed a career office. I've learned about career development, and I've gotten my doctorate in leadership development and been in leadership programs, and was a life kind of relationship coach prior. So like these merging of worlds allows me to work with a variety of clients. So I initially was just working with leaders, and then those leaders were like, well, I kind of want a new job. You've taught me to be fearless. I don't want to be in this toxic environment anymore. I'm like, okay, let's get you a new job. And business naturally evolved to be basically like, you don't know what you want to do? Great, let's work together. Career clarity. You know what you want to do, but you can't get the job. No one wants to hire you or talk to you. Great, let's work on getting a job. You're in the job and you don't know how to be as effective as you want to be. Awesome. Let's talk about leadership. You're a leader in a job, but you're not being the leader that you truly want to be. Great. Let's help you, learn skills to manage your team. So it's like this whole journey. Oh, you're unhappy again. Let's help you get a job. So it's this like journey of an individual within their career. And generally throughout their career, they're going to be held back by not knowing the solution to the problem that they're facing, or not even knowing how to put verbiage to the problem, not even how to to understand what it is. That's who we work with.
Okay. So these people that feel like they want to change careers, I imagine, I don't know, maybe some of them, if they're motivated, if they work with you, they develop the confidence or whatever, it's easier. But I imagine that a lot of people, it's difficult for them to change careers, especially when they've sort of built something up. They've sort of worked hard to be where they're at. Maybe they have, maybe that is one of the spaces where people do have this emotional attachment to their job. But do you work with people, or would you have advice for somebody who is in that space where they've worked hard to get where they're at, but simply being there and being in that job is just draining to them, and it's no longer, what's right for them?
Yeah, it depends when we end up meeting, because if we meet them early on, we can do a lot of changes to their current job. We can do some job crafting, which brings back the levels of job satisfaction and engagement that they might have been perceiving before. And the reason why we kind of want to focus on that area too is because if you're in an environment where you're constantly stressed, you're drained, you're burnt out, you generally don't have the energy or the time or the focus, the clarity to be able to figure out what you want to do next. And so we try to at least clean up where they're at a little bit. Hopefully we catch them a little bit early. Generally someone though seeks coaching when they're kind of ready to quit. Right. And so a lot of our coaching is like, should I quit now? Should I not quit now? Like, it's always easier to find a job when you're in a job. It's always easier to find a job when you don't have a time limit based on the money that you're making. So I highly recommend, if possible, start your search in the position. Also understand that depending on the toxic environment, you might not be able to do that. Okay, now I've lost my train of thought. Help repeat the question for me, Cody, please.
So we were talking about these people to make the transition in the career coaching.
It's hard. Generally it's not hard for people to leave what they have done because they want to leave when they come work with me. It can sometimes be hard for them to believe that they can create a successful career, maybe if they want to pivot. If they're looking for another job, generally when they come to work with me, they are a little discouraged about what work is. And so they need to kind of be talked off a ledge, like, hey, that last job isn't every job, and kind of build some rebelief in the job world as well as in themselves. I love that people become entrepreneurs because of toxic work environments, that they create something for themselves. The problem is sometimes people do it too quick and don't realize that they don't really know what being an entrepreneur is, and they actually just don't want to be their own boss. They just want a better boss. And so you kind of have to work through those questions too.
Okay. So this makes me think of one thing I want to ask you before we close out. I was talking to Dr. Jessica Ty, and she was talking about how burnout is like a real thing. Like, people think, like, we just hear the word burnout, oh, we're just working too hard or whatever. But so these people who may be, before they get to this space, I guess when they come work with you, do you recommend a way to avoid burnout? Because I think as leaders, as people who are really sort of in that space, it's very easy to sort of get consumed by just the weight of the mission or the company or whatever. So, and I don't know if that's one thing that you do when they come to you as far as career coaching goes.
Yeah, burnout is the sustained, the sustainment of negative emotions or stress for a period of time that leaves you like empty. Like burnout is, some people are like, I'm burnt out. And I'm like, well, can you feel joy? Can you feel happiness? Can you feel motivation? Like, are those things still there? Yes. Okay, great. We caught you early. Sometimes though, people are like, no, I like the things that I love, like going to the gym, don't care about anymore. I just want to sit home. I don't really want to work. I don't really want to hang out with my friends. Okay. We're in the realm of burnout. The sustainment of negative emotions long enough to basically leave you burnt out. And the difficulty with that is the things that used to bring you joy don't bring you joy anymore. And so immediately we have to identify what those drainers are. What is truly negative in your life, from relationships to the position itself, not just the things that you perceive are negative, like the things that are actually negative, like that person that's calling you names all day, or the person that's talking down to you, whatever it is. And we have to try to limit those immediately, get that low-hanging fruit out of your life. And then we have to take a look at, well, what are the things that used to bring you joy that you stopped doing because you're burnt out? Let's at least pick one of those things and start integrating them back into your life. Because oftentimes when people are burnt out, they just don't do anything because they think nothing makes them happy. Nothing brings them energy. And they think the only thing that's going to make me feel better is just leaving all of this and going somewhere else. Okay. We haven't changed anything. But so generally we take away the negative, bring back the positive, even if we don't feel that it's going to bring us joy yet. And generally what tends to happen is we start kind of reconnecting to those aspects of ourselves. And even if we don't feel those severity of positive emotions, the positive emotion is happening. We're getting dopamine, we're getting all those lovely things, and eventually we start rebuilding it. Now, sadly, most of the people I work with in the career world, they're so burnt out. They have such a negative attachment of their job to this negative emotion that is actually draining them, that they need to leave. Now, it's not always a solution, but it's a lot easier to cut the thing off than to try to fix it. And it's like, so you have a broken car. Do you want to fix the broken car, or do you want to sell it or leave it, like abandon it and buy a new car? Generally, it's a lot easier to go buy the new car, but sometimes people need to fix the old car because of whatever situation that they're in.
That's a really good answer to that. I think what I would be concerned about, you mentioned the car analogy, if you're burnt out and you're going to something new, are you taking the same self to that? Are you going to be in a place where you're even receptive to that?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest issues, is generally that people find out it's how they work, not the work. Right. And so they go into a new environment and they, still overwork themselves, still don't have boundaries, still lack confidence. And so it just leads to the same thing.
Listen, man, it's been great talking to you. I'm gonna let you get out of here. I'm not gonna keep you all day. Do you have social media or website or anything that you want to share?
So I have my main website, liveforyourselfconsulting.com. Check it out. You'll find Becoming Fearless there, which is the book that I have. It's literally everywhere on Audible, ebook, or paperback. Highly recommend the paperback. And then LinkedIn. So I'm mostly active on LinkedIn. Dr. Benjamin Ritter. Connect with me. Let me know you heard me here. If you read a review for this podcast and screenshot it and send it to me, you might get a free copy of my book. So reach out.
All right. Nice. And so this is one last thing I usually ask everybody before we close. If you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it can be from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing, or your career, just any experience you've had. What do you think is one of the most valuable, most important lessons you've ever learned?
Yeah. So when I lost soccer, I dedicated my life to it. It was the thing that I thought was my purpose. And so when I actually created a company, and the first talk I ever gave was the worst advice I've ever received was to find your purpose. And it's not that it's bad advice. It's just that we aren't given a rule book on how to actually make it valuable. And so the one thing that I learned from those experiences, was that you are always more important than any emotion or thing that you feel. That means the job that you have, the business that you created, the relationship that you're in. These are all things that you've made important because you've given them the label of it being important. You've given something the label of being your purpose. So if it ever is taking away from your health, is hurting you, and not in a way that is good for you, then you need to always put yourself first. You got to live for yourself. Hence the name of the company. And remember that nothing is more important than you.
Yeah, man, I love that. I don't think I've heard that said that way before, and it's going way back to the beginning of this. I think we put a lot of attachment on the things that are outside of us, the things we're working towards, achievements, companies, roles, bank accounts, whatever. We put a lot of attachment and like self-worth on these things. So I appreciate you putting that way. But yeah, it's been great. I think we covered a lot of things here. We got into some depth, I think. So definitely appreciate it. Appreciate your time. I'm going to close the video. If you can hang out for just a second, I'll explain something to you, and then we'll go from there. But I do appreciate it. Hey guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.